Do you think, and would you as president, use the U.S. military to seal our southern border?
Well, it's very important that we use our military to support our protection of the southern border. What I would do in approaching the southern border, and of course I was in charge of border security during the Bush administration.
Yes, I know. Yep.
And as some people might remember, we didn't get it perfect, but it looks perfect compared to what you see today.
For sure.
And so I have a little bit of experience along the border security. I was head of the DEA, and so I had to deal with Mexico in reference to the cartels. And that is probably the number one thing that is important, is to address the cartels, to declare them foreign terrorist organizations that harm Americans, that cause a great deal of human suffering, and are responsible for bringing fentanyl in that's killing our citizens and our young people.
Yes.
And so the southern border, we need to increase our borders resources with our Border Patrol. We need to build the infrastructure, including continuing the wall, but we also need to have technology that supports the protection of our border. We need to reform our asylum laws, and then we have to go after the cartels. A very specific plan as to how to bring security to the southern border. Immigration's important to our country.
Yes.
And we're a land of immigrants, and we want to cherish that. We don't want to lose that. But we also need to make sure that we protect our border from a security standpoint and from a sovereignty standpoint. That defines a sovereign nation whenever we can control our borders.
Amen. And I think most people agree with that, or say they agree with it. But just to more precise action questions. So we have U.S. military personnel in over 100 bases around the world. The president, as you saw yesterday, mobilized some reserves to support the effort against Russia in Eastern Europe. Why wouldn't you use uniformed, and maybe, I mean, you ran the agency, so you may know the answer, and I'm ignorant, but why wouldn't you just create a human wall of American military personnel and just kind of fix the problem immediately? We could afford to do that. We don't want to do that for some reason. What am I missing?
Well, a couple points there. First of all, the military is always an option that might be needed at some point. But I want to be able to fix it without having to use
our military. How about when 7 million people come in? Is that the point?
I would like to be able to do it without using the military for a couple of reasons. First of all, we want to show strength with China and making sure we have a military presence in the Philippines. We want to make sure that we show strength in Europe and that we're able to maintain a military that has a global presence. And so the military has a lot of responsibility. Secondly, the military...
May I ask you to pause? Are those responsibilities more important than protecting our own borders?
I'm going to finish my answer first. The second reason is the military is trained to kill people. And they're not trained in traditional law enforcement responsibilities. So it's a different mission. We utilize the National Guard, but our regular military, I hope we don't have to use them on the border, that we can solve the problem without that. Now go ahead.
Okay, but if I describe to you a nation in which 7 million people had moved without permission, most of them military-age males, and bringing with them, they brought poison that killed over 100,000 citizens of the country into which they were moving every single year, you would say this is an invasion. This is not only a challenge to a sovereignty, this is proof that sovereignty doesn't exist. You don't control your country. It's not really your country. And you would say that's an emergency. In fact, you might even say that's worse than what's happening in Ukraine right now, from an American perspective. And so if that doesn't meet the definition of an emergency with which you'd use the U.S. military to respond, then what does? What's happening in the Philippines? I mean, I'm not mocking you, but what is happening in the Philippines that's more important than that?
Well, the Philippines is close to Taiwan, and so that sends a signal, of course, that fact that we have our bases there, that if we have the right personnel, the right equipment there, then we send a signal to China, don't touch the freedom of Taiwan. And I think that's important. But in terms of what is important, obviously, whenever you look at the Trump administration, they took steps along the border, but they didn't put the military personnel there.
They didn't.
And whenever you look at how we can solve that problem, if we can solve that problem short of it. There could be, there's some candidates that advocate using the military to bomb the labs in Mexico. Well, that is called an invasion, and I'd like to be able to do something short of invading a neighboring friendly country, and there's ways to do it. I've worked as the head of the DEA with President Vicente Fox at the time to dismantle one of the cartels. And we can do it again. We've got to use economic pressure on Mexico in order to be successful in targeting the cartels. This last week was extraordinary. Down in Mexico, you're seeing them use roadway bombs, the cartels, and it wound up killing civilians. Mexico has to wake up to the threat to their country and to their economy and to their citizens from the unleashed power of those cartels. The United States needs to support that and pressure Mexico if they're not going to cooperate.
I'm a little confused by the orientation. So, of course, there is a drug war ongoing in Mexico. It's been going on since you were involved in government. But it's the carnage in the United States that I think most Americans are worried about. So you just described Mexico as a friendly country, and we need to help Mexico get the drug cartels under control because they're killing people in Mexico. But they're also killing hundreds of thousands of people here, and nobody seems to care. So we can argue about, what the policy solutions are, but it's the emphasis that I think is very striking to a lot of voters. Like, where's the outrage? 100,000 people die of poison sent through Mexico, and we call them a friendly country? I don't understand.
Well, you haven't been to my town hall meetings, which
no, but I'm offering you a chance.
In which I talk about the fentanyl crisis in our cities. And Tucker, you're absolutely right. Whenever I have a friend that I call up who's in New York City, but he's from Arkansas, and I call him up, talk about a political question, my campaign actually, and I said, what are you doing in New York? And he said, my son, who is a college-age student, went to go watch a baseball game in New York. He goes out in the street, as he should not have done, and he bought a Percocet pill.
Yes.
And the Percocet pill was laced with fentanyl. And he overdosed and he died, and so the dad was there to pick up and recover the body. And so fentanyl is a crisis. It's the number one cause of death between those ages 18 and 49 in America. So it is a crisis. It is serious, and it has to be addressed both with going after the cartels, controlling the border, but it's also about what Governor Kim Reynolds did here in Iowa and had a fentanyl conference, which I attended, in which parents who had been impacted were trying to educate others about the danger of illicit drugs, particularly fentanyl, and how they can be laced with other drugs. That's the kind of education effort we need here. It's about addiction counseling as well, and families struggle with this. I've struggled with this. And so, yes, it is something that I take very, very seriously.
Yes.
I'm passionate about, I'm outraged about.
Amen.